Welcome back to another episode of the Career Ready Great Dane podcast. It's a podcast out of the University at Albany's Career and Professional Development Office, and I'm Jessica. And in today's episode, we are going into the insides of the Goldman Sachs Career Readiness Institute, why it matters, what skills it offers students, and some of the outcomes. And I will let the guests introduce themselves, starting with you, Jess.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jess Massas. I'm currently a senior here at the University at Albany studying business administration and concentrating in information systems and business analytics and finance.
Nice.
Hi, and I'm Roberto Peguero, Assistant Director for Career Professional Development in the Office of Career Professional Development. I have the great fortune of administrating the Goldman Sachs Essential Career Readiness Institute, which we will be speaking about today.
Yes. And Rob, let's get started, right? Tell us about the Institute, especially for students that have never heard of it, or maybe they've seen it in Handshake, but they don't know a lot about it, and that partnership with Goldman Sachs. How did that happen?
No, that's a great question, Jess. Overarching perspective on the Institute is designed to teach the 8 career competencies for a career readiness workforce that come from the National Association of Colleges and Employers, as we refer to in the career arena as NACE. The Institute is designed through its many activities, such as resume writing, interviewing skills, networking skills, professional email writing, to impart those 8 career-ready competencies for the workforce. Initially, the program started back about 6-7 years ago, where I was asked to create a program to teach the 8 NACE competencies that I just referred to. And over time, the program kind of went through various iterations, leading up to the most recent one where Goldman Sachs got involved with the Institute through a partnership and relationship with several UAlbany alums that work at Goldman Sachs to help support the Institute financially. So it actually went from being called a program to now being called an institute in its current rendition, the Goldman Sachs Career Readiness Institute.
Yeah, and I think it is getting more play on campus to the point where your applications have gotten to a point where it's become more of a selective program. So talk about what makes a strong applicant? Like what can students do when they're thinking about applying to, or when they do apply, to stand out?
Correct, Jessica. Because of the demand of the program on the student side, the Institute itself and being admitted to the Institute has become highly competitive. Now, once again, when I say competitive, nothing that's beyond any student's reach. Yes, there are students that are not accepted to the program, to the Institute, and there are those that are. On average, semester by semester, we average about 60 students, and actually anywhere between 55 and 60 students that are accepted to the Institute. And, they go through a typical application process, very short. We use as simple as a JOT form we actually utilize as the application. It just, honestly, some biographical or pedigree information. And then they answer a couple of essay questions, a short answer essay question, and then a longer type of essay question to give us an indication, one, what do they know about Goldman Sachs? And also to find out what they're looking to get out of the Institute, right? It's not a type of program where you can come and go as you please. If you show up, you show up. If you don't, you don't. The Institute is very rigorous. It meets over a semester-long period, 4 sessions, typically every other week in class for 3 hours, where we teach these different NACE competencies through different workshops and skill development presentations. And then it finalizes or culminates in 2 visits to Goldman Sachs locations, their world headquarters in New York City, as well as the headquarters that they have here in Latham, New York, that pretty much house their personal wealth management division, or one of their personal wealth management divisions within the Goldman Sachs umbrella. So the program is highly competitive. Getting into the institute or program is highly competitive. But, we're looking also, have to have a minimum GPA of 2.5. So we're looking for students with a strong academic background because, once again, we're asking you to make a personal, professional investment in yourself. As I like to tell students all the time, without the specter of any immediate gain or recognition. For example, you're not getting credit for being in the institute. So it's not a credit-bearing course, right? I tell students that we're not going to sit there. You're not going to get a gold star for doing all the assignments. You're not going to get a pat on the back for doing all the assignments. There are some assignments that you'll get feedback from myself regarding, how to make improvements to your resume or your elevator pitch, for example. But by and large, you're really, truly making a personal, professional investment in yourself without the specter of immediate gratification.
Yeah.
And I feel oftentimes that's in some ways more difficult than taking a college course. Because the college course, you get grades. Turn in an assignment, you get a grade, right? You get immediate feedback. There's an immediate feedback loop, as I like to say. With this, there's delayed gratification in many ways.
Sure.
So the program is designed for those that truly want to make that investment in themselves and want to put in the work to develop themselves professionally.
Yeah. One thing I do just want to note for folks, although in this new iteration, Goldman Sachs's name is tied, you don't have to desire to intern or work for them to get impact and outcome. Correct? I just want to make that clarification.
No, that's an excellent question. My apologies for not mentioning that. Once again, it's not geared just to like finance majors.
Yeah, I want to make that distinction.
Or business majors, or accounting majors. We want all types of. In fact, Goldman actually quite, to the contrary of what many people believe, they're looking for individuals with diverse academic backgrounds. You can be an English major, an art major, right, and work for Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs, even though their bread and butter and their core business is finance and finance focused, there are so many career opportunities at Goldman Sachs that, once again, you don't have to have one specific major in your tool belt to qualify. They're looking for people, and I know Jess will be able to speak to this, more eloquently than I can, but they're looking for people that good communication skills, leadership skills, teamwork, critical thinking. It's interesting enough. They're looking for people that actually check off all the boxes with the 8 NACE competencies for a career-ready workforce.
And many organizations and companies are. So this is why it's really great and applicable no matter where you see yourself going career-wise. So, Jess, let's get into what made you apply to the Institute. Like, how did you find out about it and what made you want to pursue it?
Definitely. So, to be honest, I don't remember how I learned about it.
That's okay.
That's okay.
It very likely was Handshake because at the time I was stalking Handshake quite a bit. It could have also been an email from Deirdre. But it definitely intrigued me, not only because previously in that same academic year, I want to say, I had went to the job and career fair or a job and internship fair at the E-Tech building, and I did go to the Goldman table. And as a first-gen student, I never saw Goldman like in my future or as like a possibility just because of their prestigious kind of reputation. And then I spoke to someone so wonderful at the table that really just opened my mind up to the possibility of like, this is somewhere that I could fit in. And so Goldman just for me was kind of top of mind, and having the name attached to the Institute did kind of intrigue me as well, but also kind of building off of what Roberto said, it was the want to better myself. It was the want to, not think that I had everything together and learn from others and increase my skills. And I feel like especially the whole mentoring aspect of it was so attractive as a student because, how often will you be able to get FaceTime outside of a networking setting or outside of a job fair or outside of a very specific circumstance with a Goldman professional. And it doesn't, there's such a wide variety of people to meet and talk to, and you never know the kind of information or connections you'll make. And it was definitely a big reason why I applied, and I'm very glad that I did.
Good. And we did talk about skill building and the skills that students walk away with. What skill do you feel like you developed most?
There are a lot, but I think there's an overarching theme of leveling up your networking game, because networking, when you think about it, is a much more interpersonal interaction, and that oftentimes comes with a lot of soft skills. But networking as a whole, especially when you're pursuing professional opportunities, is not successful if you don't have these NACE competencies down. So you could have an amazing connection with somebody and they might be able to offer you an opportunity. But if you send in a resume that, doesn't really highlight you, or if you aren't sending proper professional emails, or, if your language isn't there, if your professionalism isn't there, it can kind of make it all fall apart. So what you learn in the institutes really are the pillars that hold up this incredible phenomenon known as networking. And so I think having the opportunity to really sharpen up all of them, even networking strategies like the STAR method for behavioral questions that are taught in the Institute, really do a good job of kind of passing the finish line when it comes to networking, because you could have somebody vouching for you, but if you flop the interview, you're messing with their credibility when they speak highly of you. You're messing with your own credibility because you're kind of, not explaining your full potential. And I think the Institute does such a good job of giving you the tools, not a step-by-step walkthrough, not holding your hand, but the tools to learn for yourself and to better yourself.
Yeah. And that's a gift.
In the professional world, most definitely.
Yes, because at some point you leave the university, but you'll have that toolkit with you along the way for your life. So I think that's important. So you sort of got into the networking piece, and this institute does have an alumni mentor or a mentor component. Correct. Rob, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Correct. So every student, initially when the institute first started when Goldman got involved as a sponsor, every student was assigned a Goldman Sachs staff member to mentor them during the time of the institute. Now, the hope is, right, that the student and the mentor are developing a professional relationship during that semester, that then that relationship extends beyond the institute, right? The time, that semester where that student participated in the institute. Now we've moved to a new format where we give the students the option whether or not they want a mentor or not. Okay. And we found out that probably about half the students aren't really interested in having the mentor piece, which is perfectly fine because, once again, students aren't wasting their time. Goldman staff members aren't wasting their time with students that aren't really looking for that. But for the students that are, they have the opportunity to have a mentor assigned to them throughout the semester. And once again, we encourage students, make the most of that relationship. Students in the Institute that have been highly successful in getting opportunities with Goldman at the internship level and then beyond are students that not only took all the components that are being taught in the Institute, to heart and incorporated in how they approach their career development, but more importantly, that mentor piece, because that mentor piece leads to additional networking opportunities with staff at Goldman. I do want to say this, because I don't want to discourage students that may not have an interest in working for Goldman Sachs and say, well, then the Institute's not for me. This Institute is for everybody, because the Institute is designed to teach the 8 NACE competencies that make anyone ready for a career-ready workforce. So whether you're looking for an opportunity with Goldman or not, the one thing I could say is if you take the Institute seriously and what we teach in the Institute, it's definitely going to prepare you to more effectively pursue your own personal career development and opportunities in whatever industry it might be. So I wanted to be very clear about that I don't want,
I know.
that this is for everybody.
Yes.
Now, but if you're looking for opportunities with Goldman, then this is the place to be.
Sure.
I'm going to say that. But once again, any type of student, any major, any background can, gain a lot of positive information as well as learn a lot of positive lessons that will definitely positively impact their personal career development.
Yeah. So, Jess, during your time in the Institute, did you have a mentor?
I definitely did.
Okay. And can you just walk us through what that relationship or your meetings looked like? And did you continue a relationship with that person?
Yes. So I would definitely say I was so blessed. I had such an incredible mentor. Her name was Leslie. Her department is eluding me, but
That's okay.
she was just incredibly, incredibly kind. It was so easy to just send an email to her, set up a Zoom meeting, get to know her. Our first introductory meeting over Zoom was just so nice and relaxed. I was able to we really just talked about our background. We saw how much we had in common. She was just very relatable, down to earth. She was also kind of not far off from me in terms of age. So there was so much to kind of talk about in terms of still thinking about college and the transitions that we're going through and whatnot. And then from a professional standpoint, she just had so much knowledge to offer. And I feel this is a theme with almost everybody that works at Goldman. They are just constantly, overwhelmingly willing to help you in any way they can, to answer questions, to be there to listen, within reason, obviously keeping up professionalism and things like that. But, if you have a genuine question about something that you're confused about or something that you want to pursue, they can either answer your question, they can connect you with people, they're just always so willing and so kind. And I was able to keep up a relationship with my mentor. And when I got an internship with Goldman this past summer, I messaged her. I was able to have lunch with her in person. I kept her updated on all of my progress. She was just so happy to see me succeed. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to meet her through the Institute because even though I ended up getting an internship at the office she works at, there's so many people. There's a chance I might not have ever met her, even though I was working in the same building as her. And now I do. And she's somebody that I can connect with, talk to, lean on, etc. So very grateful.
I'm glad. That sounds like a great outcome, good relationship, and that's what's important. So let's pivot, Rob. You talked about the 2 site visits that sort of come at the end of the Institute. Yep. Can you just walk us through what does that typically look like for a student?
So we have 2 site visits at the end of the Institute. One is to the offices here in Latham, New York, and then the other ones are to their global headquarters in New York City. The Latham, New York office visit, relatively short, about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Spend the first hour in some type of workshop setting or format that the folks at Goldman, that host us are the folks from their human resources and talent acquisition team, and as well as some alums, UAlbany alums that work at Goldman Sachs. And the workshop usually involves some type of professional development topic, idea, or concept that they want to impart to the students, or they feel that it's important for the students to know as well as learn. And then it quickly pivots to about an hour networking session in a relaxed format, relaxed environment in an area within the offices where students and those UAlbany Goldman Sachs alum can spend about an hour in small groups, pretty much just having conversations around career aspirations, career goals, whether at Goldman or more broadly. And that's pretty much the format for the Latham visit. The New York City visit, similar but different in a number of ways. By and large, we usually get a keynote address for about 15 to 20 minutes with some Q&A with a UAlbany alum that's, working at a high level at Goldman, typically managing director and or above. The last few visits, we've had a UAlbany alumnus and Goldman, I believe, is the manager director currently, Dean Backer, give the keynote. And, Dean is great, very engaging with the students, gives a great presentation, and then also does a great job of, fielding questions during the Q&A portion. Then we pivot towards having someone from the talent acquisition team kind of basically walk the students through what the process is towards gaining an internship with Goldman Sachs. So, everywhere from the application process, kind of what they look for in a resume, as well as, what to look for during a higher view interview with Goldman.
Okay.
And then if you make it to the next interview level, what a super day looks like, and then what it looks like to get offered and beyond that.
Okay.
So they kind of walk you through the steps on these are best practices to be as successful as you can be navigating when I say our, meaning Goldman's application process for gaining an internship. So that they do a great job of doing that and walking students through that process. And then it culminates with about an hour of networking. Now, they approach the networking portion a little differently than the Latham office. They'll have several UAlbany alums that work at Goldman kind of like on a panel and, answering questions from the students and having a dialogue with all the students at once, but in a Q&A type of format.
Okay.
So that's kind of how they approach their networking piece during the New York City office visit.
Okay, that's great. So let's sort of close and wrap the conversation up in terms of outcomes. What have you seen, Rob, in terms of outcomes from students who have gone through the Institute? Like, do you have any success stories?
Great.
What does that look like, just so
Well,
we know?
I'll say first and foremost, from a qualitative perspective, I can say students that take the Institute seriously, they come to all the sessions, they do all the assignments, right? They definitely are better positioned when they're done with the Institute to effectively pursue their personal, professional career development, right? And and how that entails pursuing job opportunities and career-related opportunities. Specifically for those pursuing opportunities with Goldman, I can definitely say this. We have currently about a 57% success rate with students from the Institute who actually apply for opportunities with Goldman, obtaining an internship or a post-graduation full-time offer. Now, somebody say, 58%, okay, so 50-50, let's run 50-50.
I think that's great.
Some people say, is that great? That's not. I always tell people this. If you think about baseball, in baseball, if you only succeed 30% of the time, you're a Hall of Famer, right? In sports, you actually fail more than you succeed, right? And you could still be considered a great,
Sure.
right? I always use that analogy, but Goldman tells us that a little over 1% of all of those that apply for opportunities with Goldman get offered. The Institute's producing 57%.
Amazing.
So from a quantitative perspective, we're doing a great job of providing opportunities for students to succeed in getting jobs, whether internships and then post-graduation offers through the Institute. But I'm going to say this. Our job in the Institute is to provide students with the opportunity, or as I like to say, an on-ramp, right?
Sure.
At the end of the day, the students in the Institute, each individual student has to grab the bull by the horns, as I like to say, and make a serious commitment to wanting to make a personal, professional investment in themselves.
Yeah.
Those that do tend to be the more successful students. So, for example, we have Jess here, right?
Yeah.
She was in the Institute. She grabbed the bull by the horns.
Right.
She showed
Hence
up,
why she's here.
and that's why she's here, right?
thank
That's why she's on the podcast
Yeah,
with us. That's why
yeah.
we're having this discussion. She came to every session. She took it seriously. She did the assignments, right? She She, applied all those lessons to her resume, her interviewing skills, her networking skills. All networking really is, at the end of the day, is relationship development.
Sure.
And Jess is great at that. Do I think she had a lot of the skills that we teach in the Institute? I believe Jess did.
Yeah. It's like fine tuning it a bit, right?
We help to fine tune it.
Yeah.
Because you'll have students that come into the Institute, they're at a baseline level, they're all at different levels. You have some students that honestly are completely clueless on how to develop themselves
And
professionally.
good that they're there then,
and
right?
it's good that they're there. And then you have students that are a little bit more developed, a little bit more advanced. So they're coming in at different levels when it comes to their personal career development, and that's perfectly fine. That's why it's great to see. Now I'm going back kind of like to the qualitative perspective, to see students and how they develop throughout the semester. You have some students completely clueless how to write a simple professional follow-up email.
Yeah.
By the end of the Institute, they're moving on all cylinders. They know how to do it. It's become second nature. The same thing with like the elevator pitch. Just having the courage to have a discussion with a professional. You see it. Some come in completely clueless, not knowing what to do. And by the time we're done with the Institute, you could see that they've advanced tremendously. But like I always say, when it comes to career development, you're never done. You're going to be developing from a career and a professional perspective until the day you retire.
Yeah.
Because the world of work is always evolving, and we have to always evolve with it.
Sure.
I tell people all the time, your resume, how you interview, your elevator pitch, it's like a living, breathing being.
Yes.
It's going to evolve as your career evolves, right?
Very much so. Yes.
Jess is a perfect example of that.
Let's get into that.
Yeah.
Let's talk to you. So
Let's hear it right from Jess.
seriously, because you've already mentioned you got an internship, which is already like clap, clap, clap. Like
Thank you.
That's already a challenge. It sounds like not every student that applies, very little students that apply get something.
Definitely.
So can you talk about the outcomes for you? What sort of change? Did confidence change? What are the tangible changes and outcomes? You're about to graduate. Like, what does that look like post-graduate? Give it all to us.
Yes, of course. So I definitely do want to reiterate that, yes, it is difficult. And this is not meant to intimidate anybody, but Roberto mentioned it was a little over 1% in terms of admission rates to Goldman. And in the past year, it actually dipped to below 1%. So
See, I didn't even know that.
my internship class, they constantly clapped for us, and they were like, guys, just so you know, we had tens of thousands of applicants and less than 1%.
It's like getting into the NFL, the NBA.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's kind
an
of what
offer
it's
for
like.
an internship.
Wow.
So, yeah, they definitely wanted to give us a pat on the back for that. But
Sure. You deserve it.
I think, the Institute does such a good job at preparing you for that and, giving you opportunities that other people don't have going into the firm, and having FaceTime with Dean Backer and having, opportunities to talk to people there and learning from professionals themselves at the firm. Hey, this is what we look for. And if you do this in your hire review, like we're not taking your, we know we're not going to take you to the next step.
Got
or,
it.
If we
Like
see
cheat codes.
Yeah. No, honestly, the Institute, I would definitely consider the Institute as a cheat code, but it's not like handing you something.
Yes.
It's
Correct.
not babying you. It is, hey, if you have a desire to improve yourself, if you have a desire to benefit yourself professionally and get somewhere, and I would definitely say before going into the Institute, I had a lot of the skills that are taught, right? But I didn't let my ego say, hey, I already know this stuff. I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
Or this specific session is going to teach this. I already know this. I'm not going to go to that session. Like, that was never the case. It was like, there's always something to learn. And learning the same thing from different people, you're going to learn it different ways.
Yes.
You're going to benefit in different ways. So it just does an amazing job. And so getting the internship, the interpersonal skills that I developed in the Institute and the, pillars of networking helped me throughout the internship when it came to writing follow-up emails and connecting with professionals. And I definitely would say it helped me succeed in the internship. And it so happened that a week after the internship ended, they called me and asked me to come back full time.
Yay. That's amazing.
That's what we want. That's what we want.
So you're essentially graduating knowing you have a full-time offer.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Such a blessing.
Yeah.
Such a blessing.
Yes.
Because, especially like
It's a turbulent job economy.
Specific point in time, it's a lot. I mean, for people in my age group and under the circumstances that we're just in right now, yeah, it's scary. And I almost, what's the term? When you kind of feel bad that you're not in the same boat as everyone else. Mm-hmm. I can't think of the analogy or the term, but
not imposter syndrome, but it's
I'm getting like almost like a privilege.
Like you almost feel guilty.
Oh yeah, a little bit of guilt.
You're almost feeling guilty about your own success.
Yes.
And I'm going to say this for you, Jess, and to anybody that's going to be listening to our conversation. Never feel guilty about your own success.
Yeah.
If you put in the hard work, guess what? You deserve the results and the fruit of that hard work.
Exactly.
It should be an inspiration to other students, other people to say, you know what? Jess is just like me. If she can do it, I can do it, right? Yeah. So never look at it as like, feeling bad or guilty, I'm doing this, but my friends aren't. Like I said, we provide an on-ramp, and the students that take it seriously and grab the bull by the horns tend to be more successful with the program. And that there's nothing more true than that. So I always say, don't, if you're successful, congratulate yourself.
Yeah.
Always have a measure of humility, right?
Yeah.
But never feel guilty about the success you're having.
No, yeah, I definitely.
And you don't do that because, I will say this, I'm going to take the liberty of saying this. Every time I've asked Jess to either come back and speak to the students in the cohorts that have followed behind her, and even today in this podcast, Jess has never said no. So that's why I know you're fine. Don't you're not feeling guilty because you're giving back.
You're giving back, and you're becoming sort of like a mentor to the incoming institute class, and I think that's important. And it's something to think about. I think Rob is perfectly right. You have this opportunity now to be full-time at Goldman Sachs. Maybe you can think about being an official mentor for this program.
Oh, no, trust me. Yeah. They're going to ask her eventually.
Yeah. And that's how you can assist and help and be a hand.
I love, if I have the opportunity, if I have the chance, helping others is something that I really try my best not to shy away from. Mm-hmm. And I will definitely say, even during my internship, I did struggle with imposter syndrome, but the amazing part about Goldman and the people there is that I was able to confide in someone, and they were able to say many of the things you guys just told me, and like, hey, you worked here, you've earned this, it's okay. Yeah. And that is definitely a driving force behind, coming back to the Institute and doing an entire seminar on networking, on what to do once you have an internship, which is something the Institute doesn't necessarily touch on because it's more about the steps you can take to achieve some, opportunities rather than what to do while you're there. So I definitely make sure to touch on that.
Sure.
Do's and don'ts for the interview process, just as somebody who has, FaceTime and access to the firm itself, and also as somebody who has gone through it before, and as somebody who values the student perspective. This is something that when I got to college, I noticed immediately. As students, we get talked at, not talked to.
Yeah.
So you get to school and everybody's just like, oh, well, make sure you meet your deadlines and make sure you do this and do that. But it's never how. It's never what that's like. It's never, and professionals don't have the time for that. So I felt like, hey, this is a gap that I can fill in.
Sure.
And from my perspective, I can say, or this is what worked for me. And just from like student to student with like similar backgrounds, similar circumstances, this is what I did. And here's how I can help. And students are so much more receptive to like, oh, she's me.
I think your first gen, that piece too, and your identity is important to talk about.
Definitely, because I ended up with an opportunity with Goldman not having connections and not having family in the professional world at all.
Yeah.
And not even, just being so new to college, being new to the, professional world and the workforce, and being new to quite literally everything, and figuring it out for myself, doing the work, and being able to help others along that journey is definitely very, very important to me.
Good. I'm so glad that it worked out for you. Congratulations on
Thank you.
your graduation and now landing a full-time role. So the final question I have is, what piece of advice would you give, or a tip would you give to future applicants of this institute? Maybe like just a quick bite from both of you.
I guess regarding the institute, it's like anything else. You get what you put into it, right? If you don't put a lot into something, you're not going to get great results. If you put a lot into something, effort, time, you're gonna get better results, right? The institute's no different. If you're willing to put in that investment in yourself from a personal, professional perspective, you're gonna get good returns. Whether that means you're pursuing opportunities with Goldman directly, or you're taking that what you learn in the institute and achieve career success in other industries, right, or other companies and fields of endeavor. So I would just always, just recommend to students, future applicants, first apply. And I say this to all students: make sure you read the directions. Believe it or not, I'm going to give you a little of the cheat code here when it comes to applying to the institute. Many applicants that get denied, not all, but many, it's because they didn't follow directions on the application. And if you don't follow directions on the application, that gives me an indication that you might not be able to do that or be willing to do that during the institute.
Sure.
So first and foremost, and that goes with one of the competencies, communication, right?
Yeah.
It's a certain type of communication, right? As well as professionalism. So, and critical thinking on some level. Make sure you follow the directions on the application first and foremost. And then if you get accepted to the institute, once again, listen, learn, ask questions, communicate, and do the work. Because the work is really for yourself and making that investment in yourself.
Thanks.
Definitely. I agree with Roberto on all of those fronts, but I think an overarching thing that many people don't think about is being a good question asker. I haven't figured out a better way to say that or giving it a better title, but this is a piece of advice that I wouldn't just give an applicant to the Institute. I would give it to college students. I would give it to early professionals, literally anybody, because you don't realize the power behind curiosity. Even in the application, if you are highlighting your genuine curiosity for something, and I can see Roberto nodding, that is definitely an indicator of like, that's the kind of people that we want, in the Institute and at Goldman. I will say, from what I've learned being involved in the firm, sometimes your technical skills will not outshine a pure sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
They want people that know what they don't know and are happy to ask insightful questions, to not try to do something that they don't know how to do just for the sake of like, oh, I need to be independent. It's like, no, like they genuinely have a culture of like, if you have a question, ask it. But to go beyond that, especially from a networking perspective, which is something that you get better at through the Institute, is, people want you to ask questions and you should want to ask questions, but are you asking a level 1 base, how are you doing, or what do you do, what's your journey like question, or are you asking something more insightful, tying current events into what you do for work, or what's something that's impacting you currently, or just kind of being more insightful and showing how you are thinking about maybe a potential position, So during my interview, one of my Super Day interview for the internship at Goldman, a question I asked was like, nowadays with TikTok being, number one on everybody's minds, and, you have these kind of like financial gurus who are kind of like basically playing like they know everything and kind of teaching people, and then people go around thinking that they know everything. And then they, become a client of, a financial coach in financial wellness at Goldman. And, financial coaches are kind of like, I was like, does that impact you? Like, do you have to deal with people who kind of come in just like thinking they know everything and having to correct or whatever the case may be? And they were very delighted to receive that question, because that gave them an opportunity to be like, oh my God, yes, like people would come thinking they know everything about life insurance and,
Right.
just topics like that. So, if you're, seeing yourself possibly in a future position, think about what might impact you and ask other people's their experience with that. So I just think being a good question asker in the institute, in your professional life, as a student, and sharpening that skill as much as you can and getting practice with that skill as much as you can through networking opportunities is going to be your best friend. Like throughout life, without a doubt, curiosity is hands down a best friend.
And I think those themes can apply to when you approach an employer table at a career fair, the questions that you ask in interviews, how you network with people and make a lasting impression. So I think that's great advice, because I see that in so many forms. Okay. Goldman Sachs Career Readiness Institute. Thank you so much for both Rob and Jess to explain the institute. And Rob has one more point he would like to make.
Just for folks to know, currently the application for the fall 2026 cohort is open. You can find that information on Handshake by going to the events tab in Handshake, not the jobs tab, but the events tab in Handshake. Type in Goldman Sachs fall 2026, and it'll, the event for that will come up. Remember, when you get to the event in Handshake, read the entire event description, right? You not only click the registration button, but you also click on the link at the bottom of the description that will take you to the application for you to complete the application form. It's a 2-part process. Yes, you have to click the registration button, the big button on the right-hand side of your page, but then click the link at the bottom to go to the JOT form to complete the application. Please read the entire description from beginning to end, because there's a lot of kernels of information there that's going to help you successfully complete the application process.
Thank you. Yeah, so you can find Career Ready Great Dane podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Feel free to follow, and if you'd like, do a review, but we will catch you next time.